All right, so let's attach that teapot spout. So I've got our spout, which is kind of like wet leather hard, and I've got my teapot, which is leather hard. And we're gonna go ahead and fit it. So by that I mean we're gonna have a look at this edge. And from my perspective, I would be holding it here to look at where I'd cut. But if you were me, this is what you'd see. So you'd start to get a sense for what angle you'd want to cut this part of to fit your teapot. So I'm going to go ahead and back us back up a little bit here and show you how I'm going to do that. So I'm going to eyeball it. I always want to get down at eye level and have a needle tool. So I'm down here at eye level, and I'm considering my water level, which I want to be about here. And I need to make sure that my spout comes above that. And right now I'm just on the edge of it, lightly tracing a line that represents the part of the body that I would need to cut out to get it to be even. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut that on the first side. And I usually leave a little extra than what I think. And then I take the part that I cut off and I put it on the opposite side, flipped in direction. And I trace it. And then I cut that from the opposite side as well, making sure that I lined it up properly, which in this case, I could have moved it a little bit further up. So let's try that again. Measure twice, cut once. And I'm gonna come around the top edge now. And I just wanna make it so that it's kind of beveled loosely to the point where it would go on the piece. I don't wanna leave like a big chunky edge. I want it to be beveled so that it's gonna come flush to the piece. So that looks like that. Okay, find the ugliest part of your teapot at this point. If there's an asymmetry, if there's some part that you don't like I've got a little indentation here, so that would be perfect. That's where I'm gonna ultimately put my spout. So I'm looking at that and I'm thinking about the placement that I've got. I think up a little bit would work better. All right, so from here, I can then finish rounding it out because the upper edge, I've kind of got this squared effect. So I'm gonna round that out to make it attractive. And then I'm gonna bevel the inside again. And that's, once again, not like a perfect bevel because you're gonna slip and score it so much to the point where it barely matters anymore. So I've taken off a bit more, smoothing out some of those lines that I drew earlier that I don't want, and trying that on for size and seeing how I feel about it. And I think that's cute. So how do I know where to cut? I don't want to just cut some random hole halfway down my pot. If I put my spout down here, that's not a teapot anymore. That means that my water line would be all the way down here and I could only fill water into this part of the teapot. Okay, if I put it halfway up, again, the bottom of my spout is where the water line has to be beneath. So I'd once again just be using half the teapot. So make sure that your spout is coming to about a 45-degree angle from the midpoint of your teapot, okay? So to figure out placement, I'm gonna take a little bit of slip. You could also get away with doing it with water, and coat the inner edge of your piece, and then get a really good eyeball on it, and then tap it and pop it off. And then you'll see that there's a water line. Do not cut around the outside of the water line. You wanna cut around the inside of your water line and leave a little extra to work with. And it's important that this hole that you're cutting be smooth edged. If you're getting your hand inside a teapot and you have a sharpness on the inside, so I've got my hole now, and I've got this extra clay that I can set aside. All right, so now it's a slip and score game, but before I do that, get a wet finger, come inside and smooth out this jagged edge that you've cut on the inside. When you're cleaning a teapot, if you stick something inside there and you like cut yourself because you never bothered with this step, you'll regret it. So smooth out these transition pieces. All right, so then we're gonna go ahead, slip and score. So we're gonna slip and score the whole area around it. So getting some slip, getting that on there really well. Okay, we're not gonna be welding or blending this spout on, so we wanna rely on our slipping and scoring technique, going in multiple directions. And you wanna make sure that you've slipped and scored the whole area where you're likely to be making your attachment. So slipping and scoring your spout itself, getting lots of slip on there, and scoring repeatedly. We do not want to have to blend this. We're just gonna stick it on and clean up the edges, and we can get away with that if we've slipped and scored enough. So I'm gonna get down and make sure that I'm putting it on evenly. You don't wanna accidentally put it on askew and have a wonky teapot spout, okay? So I'm gonna look at it and make sure it's level, and then I'm gonna make sure that it's high enough. Okay, so that's my high place where I wanted it. You can see that my slipping and scoring exceeds the boundary. Okay, and now I'm just gonna come around here and I've put my finger inside to apply counter pressure, and I'm just gently smoothing that on and around. Okay, I like to kind of flatten out the top. That's just an aesthetic choice that I like to make. Okay, and then you can get in there with a sponge, or my favorite, a wet paintbrush can really take care of any remaining scoring marks and such like that. If you really don't like the way that it's formed its attachment, you could roll out a thin little noodle of clay, slip and score the area, and come around and blend that on if you wanted to. I'm satisfied with how mine looks, but if you weren't, that's a technique that you could use. All right, and at this stage, I can cut my spout tip and refine it. So now that it's on there, I'm gonna take a little bit of water and give it just one last go over, smoothing it fully, and I'm gonna change my angle a little bit because I want it to be coming over. So I'm gonna face it towards myself. If it collapses, you can once again stick your tool handle or paintbrush handle inside. Okay, so I'm getting that oriented the way that I want it. And then I'm gonna stick my paintbrush handle in there, and I'm just gonna apply counter pressure around that so I know that's smooth. All right, so we're there, and then I'm gonna cut it off at a vertical angle. So make sure that you've got something clean to cut it with. If there's scraps on your cutting tool, like I always have because I'm messy, it won't work. So I'm just pressing it straight through to my finger, okay? So now I've got that there. And stick your tool back in to clean up the opening. And it's easier if I look at it, although you guys get less of a vantage point on it. All right, so it's a pretty good connection. I'm gonna let it sit for a moment and come back and smooth it some more. But there is my teapot with a spout on it. And then next video is going to be putting the handle on.